Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Sharon Florentine, and welcome to today's Security Boulevard webinar, breaking down the Zero Trust and SASE relationship, brought to you by Menlo Security. We have an amazing webinar for you today, but before we get started, I do need to go through some housekeeping items with you. First of all, please remember this is being recorded, so if you miss any or all of the presentation, you'll be able to go back and watch it again. We'll be sending an email with instructions for how to access the webinar on demand, or you can visit us at securityboulevard.com/webinars, and it will be there for you as well. We are taking questions throughout the presentation, so you can use the Q&A tab on your webinar console to submit questions at any time. We will try to get to as many as possible at the end of the presentation. If we don't get to your question, rest assured we will gather all of them up, send them over to our speakers, and they will be able to follow up with you afterwards. We are also doing a drawing for 4 $25 Amazon gift cards, so stick around to the end to see if you are a winner. And finally, we're going to have a poll question for you today. So when that pops up on your screen, we'd really appreciate if you take a couple seconds and submit your responses. All right. Well, with that, I am pleased to introduce to you today Mark Guntrip. He's the Senior Director of Cybersecurity Strategy at Menlo Security, and Jonathan Lee, Senior Product Manager at Menlo Security. Gentlemen, welcome. Thank you for being here today. I'm going to turn my camera and my mic off and turn it over to Mark to get started.
Thank you, Sharon. So I'm going to get this thing rolling. Hopefully, can you guys see my screen? I just want to check.
Yep, there it is.
Awesome, thank you. Just wanted to make sure, because I had a little ding come up on my Chrome saying there was a problem. So thank you. So as just said, so my name's Mark Guntrip, and Jonathan Lee the two of us will be taking you through this journey today, talking about two kind of buzzwords I think that we hear in the marketplace quite significantly. And I think there's a very interesting intertwine between the two that maybe isn't necessarily always called out. So we'll try and unravel this mystery as we go through the presentation today. But before we kind of get to the main event, as it were, I just wanted to kind of look at the threat landscape and what are we seeing, and actually why is anybody talking about a new need for security and zero trust and a new way of deploying in terms of SASE, as Gartner coined the phrase. And the reason is, well, there's a few, starting with the first, and I think this really hasn't changed over many years, of the number or the volume of threats is going up and to the right, and it kind of doesn't matter what type of threats you're looking at, they're increasing. So here, a few stats here from the Verizon DBIR, from phishing increasing phishing increasing up from 25% in 2019 up to 36%, so over a third of all the attacks involved some kind of phishing. Ransomware has doubled year over year, up to 10% of breaches. And while that, again, the 10% is much less than 36, but if you look at the cost associated with ransomware, I mean, I think we're all very well aware what's been in the press over the past few weeks, that's a big ticket item for a cyber criminal to actually get the ransomware and get that ransom paid. So it's a focus for those guys, and it needs to be a focus for us in terms of the security vendor landscape, in terms of how do we address that. And then finally, looking at credential theft. Almost 2/3 of all breaches involve some kind of credential theft data. So they're breaking in ways where it isn't necessarily malware all the time. It's like, I'll just pretend to be you. If I get your details, then I can come in and then we'll go from there, and I'll steal whatever I want to steal. So the threats are going up and to the right. But the good news is, according to Gartner, that IT security spend is actually increasing year over year. So it'll go up by about annual rate of 8.7%, up to over 213 billion by 2025. So that's a good thing, right? The threats are going up, but as an industry, we're spending more money on trying to secure ourselves. And it absolutely is a good thing, but it's not good enough, because if you look at the rate of increase in the costs of cybercrime, so successful cybercrime that needs to get mopped up, ransom paid, everything else that goes along with that, those costs are actually increasing by about 15% annually. So that's almost double the rate in terms of percentage that the costs of cybercrime are outweighing the amount we're spending to try and stop them in the first place. We're fighting a losing battle. And as you look at kind of the volume of the dollars that we're talking about in here, on the left, we've got a B for billion in terms of what's being spent. And on the right, we've got a T for trillion in terms of what's being spent in terms of cost. So there's definitely a mismatch in here. So the threats are going up and to the right. We're spending more in terms of trying to stop threats, but we're also spending more because we didn't stop threats. And I think that's kind of getting to the crux of where we need to go as a world, as we look at cybersecurity, about how we actually protect our organizations from the attackers coming in. Because this isn't necessarily new news to many people. And this is a question from a report that Menlo Security actually partly sponsored, looking at the likelihood of the respondent saying, are you going to be a victim of a successful cyber attack in 2021? So this is looking this year. Within the next 12 months from January to December, are you likely to have a successful attack against you? And you can see that we go back to the jolly old days of 2014. Everything's rosy there, with only a third of people thinking that they might actually get a successful attack against them. But we fast forward to 2021, and over 3/4 of the respondents, over 75%, said, yes, I am likely to be compromised by a successful cyber attack in 2021. So the attacks are going up and to the right. We're spending more to try and stop them. We're spending more because we're not stopping them. And the people that are in charge of running all this kind of know that something's going to happen at some point. So that kind of pessimism is building in. And I kind of see this as the outcome, as it were, of we've been doing the same thing for a very long time. And what I mean by that is not necessarily, looking at the same entry points or anything like that for a very long time, but we've been using the same underlying technology or the same approach for a very long time. And if you think of, what does a security stack look like, that kind of hasn't changed over the last 10 years. I would argue that maybe the last major piece of innovation that was widely adopted has been sandboxing, as we start to look and try and analyze malware and figure out what's bad and what's not. And so that's over 10 years that we've been using the same tools, and the cyber criminals have had 10 years to figure out, how do I get past it? And I think the biggest issue in terms of how we look to secure organizations is that we're looking to detect bad and block. And so if we're looking to detect something, that means we kind of have to know what we're looking for in order to detect it, which means that we might not always get it right. It also means that if we're looking to detect things, every time we see something that might be bad, it might not be bad, but it might be bad, we need to alert the security team. So we get this volume of alerts coming in. And then when we see something that is literally we have never seen before, it's probably going to get through just because I haven't seen it before. And so this kind of sets the scene for why we're seeing those threats going up and to the right, and kind of the pessimism in terms of our ability as an industry to stop these threats coming in. And that really leads to the topic for today, is about Zero Trust and SASE and all these terms that are being thrown around there, and kind of what do they mean? How do they work together? And so let's start with SASE. A horrible acronym, I think we can all agree. But nonetheless, that's what we've got. Thank you, Gartner. So if we look at that security landscape, will SASE actually resolve the issues, the problems that we're seeing with the increase? And this is where I'd like to actually have a poll before we get into this and say, where are you on your journey to SASE? So with SASE, looking at taking the traditional security stack that might be on premise and putting it up into the cloud, where are you? Are you kind of looking at and saying, I'm not doing it. I don't plan on moving any of my security capabilities to the cloud. Have you started? I'm sorry, have you not started, but I'm planning to? It's what I'm going to do. Planning is underway. You've actually started that journey. You've completed the journey, or maybe you don't know. And so I'll pause for a second there as you guys get that poll.
I'm wondering, Mark, what you think, what's your best guess? Do you think that, I mean, this is a relatively new approach. Am I correct? So do you
Yeah.
think
I think it depends who you believe. I mean, if you so what one of the presentations I give, and I don't think I have it in this one actually, is around the Gartner predictions for a Gartner framework, and obviously they're not going to say that it's not going to get adopted, so it's a very one-sided conversation to have. Their initial prediction was 40% of people would be considering this by 2024, so 3 years out. But after everything that happened last year in 2020, and we kind of all know how that went, they then predicted it was going to be accelerated into 2021 and 2022.
Right.
So it depends which way you look at it.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll here. It looks like we've got all our responses in there. And then it looks like about 11% of folks are not planning on moving to SASE. 32% have not started but are planning to. 5% say planning is underway. 16% have started the journey. 5% have completed it, and 32% don't know.
Okay. And I think if you look at the numbers there of the ones that are planning, not started, but are planning to, the planning started and completed, that I think that equates, if my math was correct, I was trying to do it in my head, to about the 40% that Gartner predicted. So maybe they got their prediction right this time. I think there's definitely a lot of benefit in moving to the cloud, in adopting the SASE framework. And as I'm not sure about the folks on this call, but I'm still working remote right now. You know, I don't see it changing too quickly in the future. That the needs of the business have changed that significantly and that quickly, that we kind of need to do something different and do it now.
Yeah.
Cool. So thank you very much for being part of that poll. I appreciate that. So let's move on to, so we've got our 40% ish that are on their way to moving to a SASE framework. So let's kind of look at what this is. And maybe I should have put this slide before the poll. Never mind. If we look at the definition of SASE as Gartner wrote it out, right? They come up with the term, they get to come up with a definition. So an architecture for unifying network and security in the cloud. So the diagram that I have here is the Gartner diagram. So on the left, we have the network as a service components. I think this is reasonably mature as we look at SD-WAN and part of the the connectivity and MPLS replacements and everything that kind of went through 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. And then it's now being met with the security services on the right. So looking at everything from your web gateway to your CASB, your cloud access security broker, your zero trust network access, firewall as a service, and kind of all of those other components. This is kind of the newer side of things. And as we look at the list that Gartner has in there, I think it's very interesting in terms of what they chose to put in there. I think it's also should be noted that I see this list very much as a menu rather than a recipe. So you don't have to have all of the components of a recipe to be successful, but you'll choose what you want from the menu to fit your organization. And so as part of the journey that we've seen many of our customers starting to take, it's very much up to them in terms of what the starting point is, where it goes to, and where it ends. So it's very much up to their definition. But if we look at why we're doing this, I think no matter which components you choose, the reason is exactly the same. And again, this is probably no surprise to anybody. We all used to work in offices. And therefore, if we're all in offices, where should we put our policy, our controls, and our visibility? We should put it next to the people in the offices. And so we built out these vast armies of appliances, security appliances, to secure those folks. And if you weren't one of the people that worked in the offices, you probably connected in via VPN in order to get access to tools, to applications, to data, to everything else, intranets, whatever it might be. And so the perimeter is very well defined. And then as we went through last year, and many companies that I've actually spoken to said that when they had to move, or when people moved to working remotely, it kind of didn't affect them because they were already there. That was already the way that they were working. So they kind of got ahead of the game. But what we've seen is this massive expansion, right, of saying, well, I now no longer, I can't take all of that traffic into my office to secure it. That just doesn't work. Doesn't work from a performance perspective, doesn't work from the way end users want to actually access things. It's just broken. So now everyone, wherever they are, connects to whatever it is that they want, whatever tools, email, the web, and do it directly. And so as we look at the security angle, and this is where SASE comes in and says, well, that appliance, which is on the bottom left of your screen there, kind of isn't doing much anymore if all of these things are just connecting to the cloud directly. And so as Gartner says, well, then we need to take our security stack, our network security capabilities, and move it up to the cloud. Because if you do that, you're closer to the people, the applications, and the data, and you're starting to see those traffic flows again. So I think it makes a lot of sense in terms of SASE to say, you know what, the location is wrong. Now I think we need to move this up so that it's actually back to doing what it is that we wanted it to do in the first place. So I put this is kind of, I would say it's a Menloized version of what SASE looks like. You'll see kind of the similar elements from that Gartner diagram. So on the left, you've got the connectivity with your SD-WAN, your telcos, network as a service, and on the right, looking at the applications and the content that people are actually connecting to. And so in the middle, we have this kind of amorphous, cloudy blob of services. And I think this is where the SASE definition, as Gartner spells it out, really doesn't help in terms of securing against all those threats. Because I think we can all agree, or at least I certainly agree with myself, strangely enough, that it is a good idea to take, I'll use the secure web gateway as an example. It is a good idea to take your secure web gateway from being in a box in your office and putting it up in the cloud. That is a good idea. Same with the rest of these things. But if you were following the SASE framework in the way that it's laid out by Gartner, you could take your firewall, and the one you have today, and put it in the cloud, your web gateway and put it in the cloud, your CASB and put it in the cloud. And now you have like 8 different solutions that were sitting on premise that now sit in the cloud. And that's good, right? They're closer to the people, the applications, the data. But if they're not integrated, if they're not actually working together, and maybe if they're not looking to secure things in a different way, then are they really doing what we wanted them to do? The web gateway that didn't stop the threats coming in when it's an appliance isn't going to stop the threats coming in when it's in the cloud. And so I think the piece that was missing from the Gartner definition is you do need to take these pieces. And again, it's a menu, so you can choose which ones you take and which ones you don't. But it's not just moving them to the cloud. It's moving them to the cloud in a way where you can actually have centralized management, so they're all integrated together, centralized policy, so that it's the same policy, it just depends on the channel and the communication, and you get centralized visibility. Because if you have these 3 things, then you're starting to look at a platform, to look at a solution rather than distinct products that don't talk to each other. And if you do it this way, then you're starting, I don't think you're finishing, but you're starting to get toward that goal of enhanced security and stopping the threats that are coming in. So I think SASE plus this centralized piece starts to get to where we need to go, but it doesn't get there all the way. And the reason I think that is because all those threats are coming in, right? And if we look at why those threats are coming in, it's because they're getting past the security tools that are in place, and why the security tools that we have used to work. They used to manage everything, or used to be great for everything we needed to do for business, but now we need to kind of move on and do something different. And this rather strange telephone that I have on the screen here is kind of the start, or I think a very good analogy of kind of where we are as a business. You go back, actually, I don't even know how far. Let's call it 200 years ago. I don't know. I made that up. And if you had this telephone in your house, you were on the cutting edge of technology. People would come around maybe to stare at your telephone. I don't know. Because the job of this telephone is to connect via a wire and to enable you to pick up the handle and do the little rotary dial till your finger hurts, and you can talk to another telephone in another house to another person. That was the problem it fixed. You can now talk to somebody in their house. And then we fast forward, maybe doesn't look as nice as the old one, but it's fundamentally still the same, right? Still got the receiver, it's still got the rotary dial, still serves the same purpose, which is to connect one house to another house so you can talk to somebody. You go forward again, design has started to change a bit. We've gotten rid of the rotary dial. We don't have to wait for that thing to come back around anymore. Now we've got buttons we can push, so we can dial a bit quicker. But again, it's still kind of the same thing. And so this has gone on for many, many years, decades. Nothing really changed with the telephone until you get to the fact that people didn't want to be in their house anymore. I want to talk to somebody, but I'm not just going to sit here waiting for a telephone call. I am going to be out there somewhere. And that's when we get to the cell phone. And I would argue that the business or the problem that the cell phone needed to solve was kind of twofold. First, it's not going to be connected by a wire because I'm going to be remote. I'm going to be somewhere else. Go, okay, that's great. I need to redesign the whole network and everything else. But second of all, and I think more importantly, this phone couldn't look like this phone because this phone wouldn't fit in your pocket. And so as we look at the design of what was the problem we are fixing, the problem is the phone doesn't fit in my pocket. If it's too big, I'm not going to carry it with me and I'm not going to do it and it's just going to fail. And so this was the point where the telephone industry as a whole completely switched and said the problem has changed. We need to solve it in a different way. And if you fast forward again, without this step, you would never get to this woman sitting on the train, on the phone, using apps, texting people, whatever it might be, because this is now the business problem. The business problem is how do I work wherever I want to be? And flipping this back to the security angle, how do I do this in a way where I can actually work wherever I want to be and be secure? And again, that's where SASE steps in for the where do you want to be, but then the other piece is, and how do I do it where I'm more secure? And that's where the zero trust piece comes in. So as we start at looking at security in a different way, I think this is where zero trust comes in. And looking at the definitions of zero trust, and there's just a couple here. I'm not going to read them verbatim. You've got them on the screen here. But out of NIST, the definition of zero trust is about resource protection, and that you should never trust anyone implicitly, but check that they are who they say they are and that they're behaving correctly. If you look at the Gartner definition, it's about network connectivity where there's no trust between the entities, whether they're inside or outside of the perimeter. Now, this is very interesting because it starts to bring that element of inside and outside, and you could be anywhere. You could be inside and bad, you could be outside and good. But the premise is kind of still the same from the Gartner definition. It's about protecting resources from people. And that is vital. I do not disagree with that at all. But I think that's a very one-directional way of looking at zero trust. So you should not give anybody access to everything on your network. That should only be the applications that they need to do their job, whoever they are, whatever role they are, device they have, location they're at, whatever that might be. So you do want to protect the resources from people, but you also need to protect your people from the resources, because there is nothing to say that your data is always going to be perfectly safe. And we've seen right at the very beginning a lot of examples where the fact the data coming down to the user, the data is the malicious part and the user is the part that needs to be protected. And so as we look at zero trust, I very much see it needing to be bidirectional. So we do need to check the end user. We do need to check the device they're on, the posture. We do need to only give them access to the applications that they need, and everything else is invisible. And that's great. But again, going to that story, if this user goes out to a SaaS application, let's say it's Dropbox, downloads a document, and they're allowed to go to Dropbox. So the zero trust piece says, yep, you can go there, you can download that. They download this file, it gets to the endpoint, the file is malicious. Zero trust didn't stop that threat. So what we need to do is make sure that we never trust the users and we never trust the data. And if we do both, then we can actually say you can connect to only the applications that you're allowed to, and any data that you pull down will be safe because I'm going to assume it's not, and I'm going to apply security to the best of my ability. So we need to look at it in this bidirectional way. And then as we kind of go back to the crux of the question, as it were, for this session today, is what's the view in terms of the synergy between SASE and Zero Trust? And we see that Zero Trust Network Access is called out within the SASE framework, right? That's kind of the only reference to Zero Trust in there, but that's protecting the resources from the user, and it doesn't go that other way. And as you look at how to implement that bidirectional viewpoint, you really need to take that Zero Trust and not have it just be a feature or an element of everything that you do, but it needs to exist in every single piece of the solution. Your secure web gateway should trust neither the user or the data. Same with your CASB, same with DLP. So it's all there that says everything we do in all directions is Zero Trust. And if we kind of overlay Zero Trust in this way, rather than thinking of it as a slither or a slice of the solution, then we start to get to a solution that sits in the cloud, so it saves us money and is operationally better. It's closer to our users, it's closer to our applications and data, and we're looking at security in a fundamentally different way. So as we look at that threat landscape, we're going to say, well, those things that are going up and to the right, I'm going to be able to block them more effectively because I'm not relying on what I've seen before and detection and remediation. I'm actually taking a step forward and saying I'm going to do this in a Zero Trust way where I'm not going to trust any data coming in. I'm not going to trust any user. And that's when we start to see the benefit of pulling the two of these things together. And so with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jonathan to go through how at Menlo Security we look at SASE, how we implement it, and kind of the benefits that go along with that. Jonathan, over to you.
Great. Thank you, Mark. Just a quick check then. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Excellent. All right. Yeah. So in line with the SASE vision we just covered, what I wanted to talk through is how Menlo Security have built out this platform which consolidates multiple security services onto a single cloud security platform, and will protect all of your users regardless of where they're working, what device they're connecting with, or indeed what network they're coming from. And a good example in the case of SASE, that could be an SD-WAN enabled connection, or it could be a user in their home office, or indeed working from anywhere. So we span security, control, and visibility across all the applications that users might be using to do their job, including web, email, SaaS, and can also enable DLP controls as well. And we implement these security capabilities utilizing a Zero Trust model. And that's one that is based on an isolation core. So this means we are taking a default position where all data could potentially be malicious and treated as such, rather than trying to be deterministic and try to determine in real time with only one opportunity to decide if something is inherently good or inherently bad. We do it essentially by isolating all the communications. So regardless of what the destination is, what the user is doing, what the app is, by isolating all of those communications as a default position, then no threats can make it through to the end user. So what we're able to deliver with this architecture is to stop all malware. If you are in an isolated session, and I'm sure that sounds like a pretty bold claim, but if you are isolated, then we can stop the malware, full stop. There's no ambiguity in that regard. We can stop phishing attacks. So rather than trying to determine whether a particular link in an email or a website is a credential phishing lure, or indeed a site that's hosting or a page that's hosting some kind of form-based credential attack, by isolating that and preventing the user from ever entering their credentials into that page, you have prevented that type of attack. So what we're able to do with this platform is implement zero trust security across all of these elements, securely enable remote work, because again, it's irrespective of where that user is coming from. And we can also do it in a way that is invisible to end users. So that's a key consideration in any type of security platform, is that you are not going to introduce friction, and you're not going to cause impact to users and their ability to do the job, which will result in them potentially trying to circumvent these controls and creating blind spots. So if we start off in terms of this architecture, I want to go through the key elements here. And the cornerstone of the Menlo Security Cloud platform is the elastic edge. So that's what enables a platform to dynamically scale to support changes in user counts and workloads. So it can automatically add capacity in real time as demand changes. So there's no need here for intervention from administrators to request additional resources to be added when, for example, a new office or geographic region is brought online, or as we saw with COVID, an organization could be required to support a much higher percentage of remote users, sometimes overnight. And we've all obviously gone through that experience, that journey of moving a predominantly office-based workforce to working from anywhere, literally in less than a week, when the global lockdown measures were implemented at the start of the pandemic. So I think we've seen firsthand with our own customers how powerful the ability to scale elastically is with this type of cloud delivered platform. Moving on to the start of the specific security capabilities that we built. First of all, we have the firewall as a service. So this is something which has evolved and been repurposed as a result of this move to cloud. Applications and data, we know, have continued to shift away from the corporate data center, both to public and private clouds. And so therefore the role of the firewall has had to evolve as well. It's had to move beyond just keeping the good stuff inside the traditional perimeter and the bad stuff out. So what we have here is a firewall that's effectively at the edge, wherever those users are, and we know that they're highly distributed, working from anywhere. That could be a branch office. As I said earlier, they could be coming from an SD-WAN network connection. They could be at home, but they're connecting and collaborating in the cloud across many types of devices, browsers, operating systems and apps. And so those data flows across all of those different environments, those hybrid cloud environments, need to be managed with granular traffic controls in the cloud. And that is what we have built and what we have implemented as part of our cloud security platform. And then if we move on here to the center of the platform, we have right at the center is this elastic isolation core. And that's the key piece that integrates all of our cloud security services and maximizes the security that we provide to our customers beyond what those legacy deterministic detect and remediate solutions that can deliver. We know time and time again that trying to determine good versus bad just does not work. There is always a new type of attack, new TTPs being implemented or leveraged by these extremely sophisticated adversaries. That means playing that whack-a-mole game just doesn't work over the long term. So we've implemented isolation to right at the core of the platform to deliver on all of these different capabilities. So you see where I'm not going to obviously read them all, but we've got malware detection and prevention, credential phishing, data protection, zero-day browser threats. All of that can be addressed through this isolation core. And that is essentially embedding zero trust into the platform so you can apply it to every aspect. So we'll assume that all web content, apps, documents, files, even archives that are being downloaded or opened via email, all are potentially malicious, potentially harmful, and you treat them as such. But we still enable the end users to access and utilize them, but in a way where we eliminate the possibility of the threats entering the organization without impacting the user experience. And that's crucial because, as I said already, it means if you give a good user experience, then the users have no reason to start trying to circumvent controls and create blind spots. So what you see here around the edge is the different cloud security products that we built on this core, as well as the various integration points that make it straightforward to deliver on this SASE style cloud-based architecture. So you can see over on the left there, we've got Cloud Connect. That is where provides our customers with complete flexibility around how their users and devices connect into the platform. And we also provide extensive APIs so that organizations can further leverage their existing investments in things like SOC, SIM platforms and other security tools, and get further value from them by tightly integrating them with our cloud security platform. So if we start work our way around the dial in a clockwise direction, first off here we have ZTPA, so Zero Trust Private Access, which provides end users with secure access only to the applications they need to do their job. And those could be applications in private clouds, in the data center, in infrastructure as a service. But what it does by providing just that direct access to an authorized user who's been fully identified and authenticated, and then continuing to do that on an ongoing basis, you remove the need for those legacy VPNs, which we know result in users and potentially attackers being granted complete access to the corporate network. If we keep going here, we have the Secure Web Gateway, or SWG, and this is a central aggregation and enforcement point for all internet-bound traffic. So it prevents users from accessing, for example, malicious websites and other harmful payloads by always being the point at which all of the traffic must pass through. According to Google, users now spend up to 75% of their day in a browser. I don't think that's a surprise to any of us. I certainly know that's the case for me. And using a SWG powered by an isolation core ensures that that channel, the web channel, which is where we're doing most of our work now, is malware-free. The cloud SWG is also a foundational layer on which other capabilities such as identity and authorization via single sign-on and SAML, as well as inline CASB and DLP controls are built on top of. So talking of DLP, data loss prevention controls are essential to make sure that exfiltration of sensitive data doesn't occur. As cloud storage and collaboration services such as OneDrive, Teams, Slack, Box and Dropbox have gained in popularity, so too has a risk of losing data this way to these cloud platforms via sensitive data that is being shared or publicly collaborated on, which is not authorized and has not been approved, but is very easy for a user to do. So with cloud delivered DLP, it keeps that data secure and provides complete visibility into how and where that data is being used across those various cloud applications. Continuing on round, we have CASB, which stands for Cloud Access Security Broker, again built on top of and delivered through the SWG platform. If we're talking about specifically inline CASB, It enables the security teams to understand how cloud apps are being used across their organization, particularly in terms of what are sanctioned and approved or managed apps, and those that are unsanctioned, unmanaged across, you know, the long tail of the SaaS app landscape. Having the ability to understand what apps are being used at any given time, by who, where data is flowing on those apps, how much data, and then having the ability to enforce real-time granular access data and usability controls on those apps on a per app basis or across groups of apps. As attackers have increasingly looked to leverage legitimate trusted cloud platforms such as OneDrive and Ignite to deliver malicious payloads. And this is something that our own labs team have covered extensively, and you can find that on our blog. We found that our platform, our isolation-powered CASB, still enables safe use of those legitimate cloud platforms without adding any additional latency. Again, going back to that all important user experience. So we keep moving around here onto ISOC. So this is our SOC intelligence capability, which, as mentioned already, the Menlo Cloud Security Platform provides extensive APIs, including logging APIs. So that provides deep levels of threat intelligence and forensic data out of the platform to be leveraged by SOC teams so they can enrich existing data and use that when running investigations and playbooks, or incorporating that into SOAR platforms as well, for example. So that's all going to help with identifying and understanding potential breaches and saving time and effort during that incident response and investigation phase. Moving on round coming around to the final furlong here, we have remote browser isolation, which we talked a lot about isolation and how it's been applied in the context of zero trust across our platform. So we have, as an organization, pioneered the remote browser isolation technology, and it's something that we've been delivering to our customers for a long time. One of the main ways that it's applied, again on top of a cloud-based SWG, is to make web browsing completely secure by effectively having all fetch and execute of websites happening in a disposable virtual container in the cloud, and then only a saved version of any website rendered on the user's endpoint. That's an extremely effective way to prevent any malware and any zero-day threats from being successful and infiltrating the network. But we've also applied isolation to email as well. So in terms of enabling safe access to both URLs in links, in email messages, and also attachments. So if you isolate every link click as well, whether it's going to a benign site or it's going to a potentially malicious site with a payload, or it could be an email that's come from a legitimate cloud service that's then taken the user on to a document, which is then trying to download something else, or taking them and linking them off to another website, that isolation is going to follow them at each stage. So whether it's an attack that's happening within the browser, or it's attack coming through an attachment, or it's through a document that's being downloaded from the web, isolation is applying at all stages of that potential attack. And just to wrap up here, so overall, the Menlo Cloud Platform offers organizations a way to implement their SASE strategy. And as we've seen, this is all about migrating from an existing network security stack to one that is cloud delivered and that's going to scale no matter what the requirements are. converges multiple services into a single platform. And I think we've seen that very clearly here, going around that dial there, the number of capabilities that can be delivered through that single cloud-based platform globally, and is built inherently on those principles of zero trust by baking isolation into that platform and applying it at each of those stages that it enables that zero trust based approach to SASE to be implemented. So at this point, I'm just going to switch across and give a very quick demo of one part of the Menlo Cloud platform, which is our CASB solution.
And just while Jonathan's pulling that up, when the screen comes on for the video, there's like a little button up in the top right of it, so you can make it full screen so that you'll be able to actually read and see what's going on with the interface. So that might make it a little easier to follow along with the demo.
Great, thank you, Mark. Okay, so let's just run into this now. So what you're seeing here is our cloud application discovery view. What I want to show actually in the demo is how an admin is going to be able to get a complete view of cloud app usage across their organization, including shadow IT. So we talked a lot about that long tail, all of those different apps that users could be using, often trying to do their job because they're not aware or they haven't been explained how they can leverage a corporate sanction tool. And so there could be these myriad of cloud applications that are currently in use across the organization, which could be potential sources or destinations for data exfiltration or for threats and payloads to come down to the endpoint. So, well, if we start off here in that cloud application view, you can see here all the cloud apps, and we can sort through those and filter based on risk type or category. Here we can see file sharing, instant messaging, and we can also view by the assigned privacy profile. When an admin first logs in, they can select one or more apps from this view, and then they can assign them either to a built-in profile, either sanctioned or unsanctioned, or indeed a custom profile. And these policy profiles provide the ability to apply real-time controls to a group of apps, including at an application level, so functions such as upload or post. So next we'll move over to policy and control. And if we look at those settings within a CASB policy profile, you can actually see the top level controls that can be applied, including the web browser access policy. In this case, we've set it to isolate, as well as login, upload, and download functions. For more granular control, you can also enable or disable individual functions at a per app level. So in this case, I'm configuring the app-specific controls for Dropbox. For example, a user can still download but not upload files to this particular app. And then we also have CASB policy exceptions, as you would expect. So that's going to enable you to easily apply specific cloud app controls for users and groups with full support for single sign-on integration via SAML. So in this case, I've added an exception for the security team based on their corresponding AD group. And you can see the AD group team, security team AD group has been assigned here to that exception. Full visibility into cloud app usage, including all file, user, and app activity, is provided through the CASB dashboard, which is what you can see here, as well as a detailed log view and also the Insights analytics tool, which we'll look at in a moment. So you can see here on the CASB dashboard, we can see we've got a number of charts or widgets which provide more detail on cloud app usage across the organization by category, by app name, and also by upload. So we can see where most data is potentially going to which apps. In this case, if I click on an app, in this case Trello, I can see the top users who have accessed that app over the selected period. So moving over to the analytics tool, which is called Insights, I have a number of predefined CASB queries here included. So I've got also the option to create custom queries as well using the powerful Menlo query language, and those can obviously be saved for future use. So here I've selected the unsanctioned apps query, and then I can further filter that query based, in this case, on username. So if I select user, and then I can go and only show requests, in this case for Rich and Bobby. So that's the view from the administrator's perspective, but to show you from the end user and also in terms of isolation in action, what I'm going to do is try and download a file from a cloud file sharing service, in this case, Dropbox. So as you can see here, the download is permitted, but as the CASB policy for Dropbox is set to isolate, the PDF file I selected is going to be rendered in the isolated document viewer. So this means I'm viewing a completely safe version of the file with no active content rendered on the endpoint at all. If, however, I attempt to upload a potentially sensitive file to this app, which, let's say in this case, is a non-sanctioned or unsanctioned app, I'm going to get an error message in this case because we have disabled the upload function. So there is no way in this case when the user attempts to upload a file, so we go here and select business letter, and that file upload is being processed. What we see here after some seconds is that the upload has indeed failed, so no data is able to leave the organization or go up to that cloud app. We can also see in the corresponding event log entry here, all the requests to the Dropbox app were isolated. And in the case of the attempted upload, the action was blocked. I can also see the CASB details for that weblog event. So I can see all the various fields that were matched, including the action, the function, and the profile name. Okay, well, that was it for the demo section. I'll hand back to Mark at this point.
Thank you, Jonathan. Sorry, I was having an issue getting my screen going there. So just to wrap this up, so we went through the threat landscape, how things are changing, how threats are, kind of growing, and our security systems, our traditional ones, are failing. What SASE means, what zero trust means, and then into how Menlo Security kind of ties all these things together. So as we kind of look at leaving you today, I would kind of reiterate those things that SASE, the Secure Access Service Edge from Gartner, is required. I think it's needed to get the security closer to people, applications, and data, but it doesn't necessarily, as Gartner defines it, pull together that centralized management, policy, and visibility And it certainly doesn't say that you should actually look at doing security differently. It just moves the security from one place to a place that's a bit more optimal. We need to be able to integrate zero trust in that bidirectional way in order to secure the users from the data and the data from the users, and the two kind of need to sit on top of each other. And if we do put zero trust at the core of that SASE deployment, so not just as a feature, as a line, but at the core of everything we do, from a web gateway to the CASB to everything else, then we can start to meet and kind of gain ground in terms of the march against the volume of threats and the success rates of the attackers that we've seen coming in. So that brings us to the end of the session today. So I am going to hand it back over to Sharon. There she is. Okay. Sharon, over to you.
Thank you very much. That was awesome. So we did have a couple questions. I think we might just have time for one or two here before we need to wrap up. So just in general, does SASE by itself enhance security for my organization?
So I'll take that one. So in terms of looking at SASE, I think as I kind of just mentioned in the wrap up, really, it's great and it moves the position of where the security is enforced, but it doesn't necessarily make your security better. It might make it better by proximity to the people, the applications, and the data, but not in the guts of what it actually does. And that's why we need to kind of look at this kind of layering or the synergy of zero trust and SASE and kind of bringing those two together.
Okay. All right. I'm going to grab this last one before we really wrap up. And I know that you both had touched on this a little bit, but I've heard this term zero trust used several different ways by several different vendors. Which one is correct, if there is such a thing?
Do you want to take that one, John, or shall I have a go?
Yeah, I can have a first crack at that. I think multiple interpretations are correct. I think if you're looking explicitly at the original definition, which I believe originated from Beyond Corp, which was a Google spin out, which was very much about that specific zero trust access paradigm. I think that's definitely something that is more universally recognized. But I think that's something you said as well, Mark, that's really only looking at it from one point of view, which is protecting the app from the users who are permitted to access that. Is a defined application of zero trust. But if you're looking at it from the other way, then that's also in terms of protecting the user themselves, and zero trust can also be applied to that side of the coin as well, not just to the individual app that's been published in a private cloud or in a data center that only particular users should have access to. That is one scenario for zero trust, but I think it can also be flipped on its head and also applied to the user as well.
Right. All right. Well, thank you both so much for that. Just as a reminder to the audience, this entire session has been recorded. So if you missed any or all of it, you'll be able to go back and watch it whenever you'd like. We'll be sending an email with instructions to access it on demand, or you can visit us at securityboulevard.com/webinars, and it will be there for you as well. All right, so I went ahead and drew our Amazon gift card winners, and the winners for today are Ginger B. Congratulations, Ginger. Ben W. Margaret L. and Ilya S. Congratulations, Ben, Margaret, Ilya, and Ginger. If you didn't win today, come back again and see if next time you'll be a winner. We'll be sending the 4 of you an email with how to access your gift card. If you don't see it in your inbox, please make sure and check your spam folders. All right, well, thank you again to Mark and Jonathan for your incredible presentation, and thank you to the audience for joining us today. We really appreciate it. We hope to see you all again soon. I am Sharon Florentine, signing off.
Thank you.